Welcome back to AV Veterans Talk. We're continuing our conversation with this week's guest, Jodi Champagne. So Jodi, we're talking about your projects now. Diminishing Generations, which is a program that I got to kind of get to work with you a little bit on. Had a lot of fun doing that, giving resources. A 3-book series.
Correct.
That highlights the service of World War II, Korea, and Vietnam.
That's correct.
And the stories of soldiers that had gone out and obviously fought in those wars. What brought you to this project? Was there a certain incident, a person, or like that got you fired up there? What's that? Who's that?
Who's that?
Yeah.
Well, I'm a firm believer, and I always talk about this in every book, that things happen for a reason. Mm-hmm. And we are put in the path of others for a reason. And one morning I was at an appointment, and sitting there talking with a friend, and I had just finished another book, and she was asking me what my next project was. And I said, well, I'm thinking I want to, talk about, our senior citizens and, that kind of stuff over 70, and I wanted to get their take on generations. And she goes, too bad your appointment wasn't until this afternoon because I have a 94-year-old woman coming in. Mm-hmm. And I was so excited. I'm like, well, can you do me a favor? Because it was just a thought process. I said, can you ask her to see how, what she would think about doing something like that for me? Mm-hmm. And she goes, I will. And as soon as she said that, here she comes, her and her daughter. Mm-hmm. They walk in the door and says, oh my God, we've never done this before. We're over 3 hours early for this appointment. And so because, being 94, they couldn't just get up and go and come back again. Right. So they came in and sat on the couch and we all just talked. Yeah. And the woman, Louise Brown, she was thumbing through my first book, and she was amazed and was very enthralled in it. And so they asked me what my next project was, and I'm like, it's just a thought process. It's just not a book yet. And the daughter happened to say, Mama was in the Marines during World War II. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, really? Well, of course, as soon as she said that, the idea started, going through my mind, and I had an idea, and I presented it to them. And the mother, Louise Brown, sat there for a few minutes, and she thought about it, and she pointed her finger at me, and she goes, honey, we were meant to come here early. Yeah. You need to tell those stories. Yeah. And then as soon as she said that, I said, you got it, I'm going to start on it. And they turned around and said, oh, by the way, she is a descendant of Francis Scott Key.
Wow.
And so she is an author herself, comes from obviously famous authors throughout the generations in the family. And she actually wrote the foreword to the World War II book, and I've also interviewed her as well.
Wow, yeah.
And, so it was amazing, and she also helped me with her friends, mm-hmm. and interviewing some of them.
Yeah. So when you're finding these people early on, you weren't really into this world, even though your husband was an ex-vet and stuff.
Right.
But when you get into in ex-vet, there's no such thing as an
ex-vet.
What the heck is that? It's like saying an ex-Marine.
Yeah. Yeah.
You get beat up over that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you got such great momentum because every time I would interact with you on the internet, you were all over the United States doing interviews. You were flying to Louisiana, you're up in Oregon, you're in Washington, and I go, man, you're getting the frequent flyer miles like crazy here. But you were getting these great stories.
Yes.
And finding these people and pulling them out of the woodwork. So the World War II book, I know you're really pushing on that because that generation is really fading away fast.
That's correct.
And, I don't know between the three you have one favorite out of them because it was really kind of like a package deal, right?
Yeah, it's a package deal. I put them in 3 books for people to have the ability to be able to, get them all. Yeah. And, when you make too big of a book, it's not as accessible.
Yes.
So, and also, the families of those veterans may want a whole bunch of that book, for their family and stuff.
Right.
It's really hard to say which one's my favorite because each person has a special place in my heart, and it's so hard because what you see in the videos, is one thing, but beyond those videos, me actually being there talking with them, and of course editing the videos, you don't see all the other stuff that we've gone through.
Yeah.
The real harsh emotion stuff, or some I've had to take a couple days to interview, up to a week to interview, and again, as I've mentioned, I might have mentioned earlier, is that a lot of these veterans have never spoke about their time.
Yeah.
And so it was very hard.
Yeah. Yeah. When you think of those interviews, like I said, sometimes weeks long, because to try to get the subject matter there and get it over a long period of time like that, you're definitely very committed to your craft.
Oh, yes.
I mean, to go fly to some place and then maybe spend up to a week trying to do an interview shows a dedication. I think your project here and stuff reflects that dedication of you and the veterans. And any specific person besides your lady that you just have that really jumps out of those 3 books at you?
Oh,
is that one
yeah.
person that just really, who is that one guy or woman?
Well, it's really hard to say one.
I know, because they all, but I know there's got to be that one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's Harold Bergbauer is one, and Eugene Lajeunesse is another, which you've met.
Yes.
Well, actually, you've met both,
Yes.
actually. But with doing these books, before I go into that, but with doing these books, I didn't set out to interview specific people, meaning I didn't want someone who saw action. I just wanted a veteran, period. I didn't care if you're a male person, a cook.
That's right.
If you're in the States, I didn't care who you were, because it's all about celebrating you. And even though you think you didn't have a story, you have amazing stories.
Yeah.
That this generation, it would never happen.
Right.
Because everything was handwritten, paper, not computer, not, any of that stuff. So, but when I interviewed Harold Bergbauer, he is a veteran, and thank heavens he's still with us, and I talk to him and his daughter, somewhat frequently. But he was in World War II, Vietnam and Korea together. But what stands out for me on him is, one, he was a POW for 39 months. He's a Bataan Death March survivor, a Hell Ship survivor, a Hell Train survivor, and he's a very strong person. But the stories he had to tell, some would make you laugh and some would make you cry. But a couple of his stories that really stood out to me was before, World War II happened, him and his buddies wanted to go into the military, but they were too young, 15, 16, 17 years old.
Right.
So they were trying to figure out how can they get in. So what they did is they took a piece of paper, wrote 18 on it, folded it up, put it in their shoes, and they went in to sign up. So they're standing there, and the woman said, are you over 18? And they all said yes. They're over 18. They didn't lie.
They didn't lie.
They didn't lie.
That's funny. That's great. Oh,
Yeah.
my gosh.
That was one of my favorite, that, leading into, them going into the service, not knowing that they were going to actually go to war.
Yeah.
But then his other story, which is amazing because a lot of people don't know this, he was stationed on Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines. That base was hit simultaneously as Pearl Harbor.
That's right.
And this specific day, they were expecting a lot of bombers to come in. And, back in the day, these young, I want to say young boys, because they pretty much were, were very excited when they saw a plane. That was a big thing back then. So when they heard the rumbling of the bombers coming, they thought it was ours coming in. So they all go outside, go, yay! And then when they saw the silver stuff coming down, they're like, what is that?
Yeah.
And it was bombs.
Yeah.
And because they couldn't see the insignias, it was, too high.
Right.
Well, he was one of the ones that was outside, and when a bomb hit, a shrapnel hit his head.
Yeah.
And of course, obviously knocked him out.
Yeah.
They worked on him, and then they pronounced him dead, put him in the morgue, and hours later he came to, and crawled out, and went back to his unit.
Oh, wow.
And his unit looked at him like dead man walking.
Dead man
you
walking,
know,
yeah.
and he looked at them and said, "Yeah, I went to hell and they kicked me out, and heaven wouldn't accept me, so I'm back here with you guys."
Oh, nice, nice. So, well, and it's amazing that, after, like you said, the Baton Death March and all that
Yes.
stuff, and I think that's one thing that's very unique about the American soldier. And I can tell great stories of, the one thing that American soldier has that most soldiers around the world do not have is a sense of humor. And the sense of humor is what gets you through,
Yes.
because you got to deal. So we're going to take a break right now. And when we
Okay.
come back, let's go through the technology of your book and why your book is different
Okay.
than most books out there on the market. Okay? So we'll be
Sounds
right
good.
back.
Thank you.
I'm Bob Alvis, and thanks for joining us for this segment of AV Veterans Talk.